there's actually a code for burnout. And it says, burnout is a syndrome conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed, feelings of energy depletion or exhaustion, increased mental distance from one's job, or feelings of negativism or cynicism related to one's job, and reduced professional efficacy. So your productivity level is going down. Frontline workers such as healthcare professionals and emergency responders, and this is during COVID, has a higher risk for burnout.
Their adrenals are just off the hook because they're on high alert all the time too, and that's really hard on your body.
As a business owner, you're in charge of managing this, and so not just for you, but how is your team doing? Thriving in Tandem. It's a podcast for you, the married entrepreneur that wants to win in business and marriage at the same time.
Welcome to Thriving in Tandem.
Hello, Thriving in Tandem family.
Hi, family.
Today's episode is on 7 health risks to the hustle and grind mentality. That was a mouthful. 7 health risks of the hustle and grind mentality, honey. What do you think about that?
Say that fast 10 times.
No, once is enough or twice enough. So we talk about this stuff, right? Work-life balance and, some of the dangers of just focusing your time and energy so much on the business. We know it can have a negative effect on our relationships, but it also has a definite negative effect on your health if you're not careful. And we've talked about it. We've even had some guests on, episode 2002, episode 202, Justin Rothingshofer. So that's a mouthful too.
Yeah.
Talked about his journey of going to burnout and the health, the impact, the negative impact that just grinding it out in business and even as an athletic trainer had on himself. And on
their family.
And on the family and the marriage.
He was married.
And so, if your health's not good, right? I mean,
what do you have if you don't have your health?
Right. And so, and we think, like when we're younger, we don't think that we feel invincible, let's say. I mean, I can speak for myself, and I know a lot of people in their 20s and 30s, 40s, sometimes even their 50s and 60s, if they haven't had any health challenges up to that point, you don't think about it, right? And so, but definitely before you have a stroke or you have cancer or you have some lung disease or whatever, there's always something that's going on underneath that leads to it. And that takes years. Mm-hmm. And so the stress and the pressure that we put on ourselves are definitely a strong contributor to potential health issues.
Well, and I think a lot of times there's warning signs, don't you?
There are, but there's some diseases that they're silent, like heart disease, true. Right? Mm-hmm. You don't know.
Like the widowmaker or whatever they call it.
Unless you get your checkup, right? You don't have any early warning signs. So if you're not having a checkup, and even if you have normal blood pressure or cholesterol levels and it's managed by medication, or even if it's just you just normally have good, vital signs, that it doesn't mean there's other things that can be working underneath, mm-hmm. right? And certain types of cancers. I mean, I was in the pharmaceutical industry for over 20 years, and there's so many types of cancers that there's no warning signs until you get the symptoms. Mm-hmm. And for a lot of them, there aren't any even tools to measure. Like at least with heart attacks and strokes, that some kind of heart disease, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, those kind of things are early warning signs that can lead to that.
And there's certain testing that you can do for that too.
Yeah, but
you get on the treadmill and do the stress test.
But in certain types of cancers like bladder cancer, for example, that stress is a big risk factor, that there are no testing. There's no testing for that.
Oh, really? So how do they find that?
Until you have an issue. That's what I'm saying. There's certain types of diseases that there are no tests to warn you ahead of time. And so these are the kind of things, and they're stress related. A lot of cancers do have, it's not exclusively stress related, just like hypertension is not exclusively stress related, although stress contributes.
to a lot of diseases and sickness to your body.
Yeah. And so, we grow up in an environment and a culture in which we celebrate the hustle and grind mentality. I mean, there are, influencers out there just promoting hustle and grind, hustle and grind. You don't get ahead until you hustle and grind, right? You got to work, 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 work. It's all it is work, 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 work. And we've bought into it. And, there is no direct correlation between the amount of hours that you work and how financially successful you become.
Well, and I think you might be able to do that in your 20s, but then when you get older, man, your body really takes a toll working those crazy hours.
So
all the stress.
Yeah. So don't take it just from us. We're kind of going a little bit into the research level. We won't go too geek out, but we do want to make a point. There's a lot of research out there that shows, the correlation between hours worked and certain diseases. So while there's no direct correlation, there's no data or research that shows any direct correlation between the hours work to your financial success in your business or your wealth and your net worth, there is data and research that shows a direct correlation between hours work and your health risk and negative health risks. So these are the top 7 that we're going to kind of delve into. We're not going to go to all 7 of these in any detail, but we're just going to skim through. But these are the top 7 health risks with that hustle and grind mentality. And that's, stress.
Mm-hmm. Which can affect your body in so many crazy ways. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times they can't even find what's wrong with you because it's stress related.
Mm-hmm. Because sometimes it's a good point. Because sometimes they'll just say, "Oh, it's either in your head, it's some kind of placebo," or a lot of times they will say, they'll ask you. Some doctors will ask you, what's your workday like and what's your environment like and all that, and it's probably stress related.
And then when they ask you that, a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm not stressed."
Yeah.
Because they're kind of got used to it, or they just live in it. And then when the doctor will say, like, "So what have you been doing?" "Oh, I got married, I moved, my dog passed away." And their doctor's like, "What? Those are all huge, huge stressors." It's all the newness.
But what's interesting, because you said, a lot of times we don't think we're under stress. Well, Justin in episode 202, he was talking about everything we do causes stress.
Mm-hmm.
Even going to the beach causes stress. I mean, the minute you wake up, you're under stress. Now, it's just the level of stress we're talking about, right?
It could be like a good stress or a bad stress.
Well,
right?
No, there's no, you said, no, there's no such thing as good or bad stress. Stress is stress. And so what you need to do is kind of manage the levels of stress you're under. So the more you add on, but negative stress just adds, like if you're scoring, it's a good stress, big beach, it's a good stress. So let's say on a scale of 1 to 100, it's a 1, but it's still a 1. Yet negative stress, like if you're going, you just got a notice for bankruptcy, right? Yeah. That would be probably stress level 90, 95, 99, right? So, and then add on to going to the beach, that's a 1, that's 100, right? So all that to say is
they all add up.
There are levels of stress. Yeah. So good stress is very low level stress, but then, negative stress has a higher degree or higher score on stress. So, but all that to say is it was saying that it made total sense when he said this, is like, we're always under stress, whether we realize it or not. And even good things that we can be doing is still a level of stress. It's just a matter of managing the day, right? So stress, obviously health risks for the hustle and grind mentality. Number 1 is stress. 2 is depression. 3 is diabetes. 4 is high blood pressure, which can lead to heart attacks and strokes. 5 is digestive issues. 6 is stroke. And then, of course, stroke leading to death, number 7. So there's different types of stress-related deaths that are out there. And then there's the others, like we talked about, cancer, and then arthritis.
Inflammation.
Believe it or not, yeah, that's arthritis. A lot of certain types of arthritis is inflammatory related. And then there's lung disease, and then burnout. Just a classic burnout. It's not necessarily actually, it is a classification of health. I was just doing some research. It's in the show notes, but I was looking at medical news today, and there's an article May 26, 2022. So it kind of outlines a number of different studies and researches around this. And there's actually, let me see if I can find it here. There's actually, if you're in the medical field, whenever you're billing for the doctor, after your doctor visit, when they bill the insurance company, they have to put in these what they call ICD-9 codes or ICD codes. And one of them, there's actually a code for burnout. And it says, burnout is a syndrome conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed and is characterized by three dimensions: feelings of energy depletion or exhaustion, increased mental distance from one's job, or feelings of negativism or cynicism related to one's job, and reduced professional efficacy. So your productivity level is going down, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as you're listening, you might be thinking, hey, do I have any of those symptoms, right? So there's actually an insurance code for burnout.
So what that means, a lot of people have had burnout then, if they have a specific code for that.
Oh yeah, for sure. And so there's studies that's shown that, frontline workers such as healthcare professionals and emergency responders, and this is during COVID, has a higher risk for burnout. But interesting enough too, there's
well, yeah, because their adrenals are just off the hook because they're on high alert all the time too, and that's really hard on your body.
And in May 2019, the World Health Organization classified burnout as an occupational phenomenon, where a person's workplace stress has not been properly managed. So, as you're listening here, you are the workplace, right? As a business owner, you're in charge of managing this, and so not just for you, but how is your team doing, right?
That too, but how about your family?
Well, yeah.
I mean, my gosh, if something happens to you, and you're the entrepreneur, the business is your baby, and something happens to you, and you're not able to work anymore. I mean, your family is really going to be hurting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
not having your husband and father of your children around.
So think about this. I mean, if you're not even thinking about it for yourself, I mean, you got to worry about your team, because obviously if they're out sick, then you're down some people, right? And then you have to get coverage and all that stuff, and there's stress
on them.
Well, no, there's additional stress.
The team. If you're not there, then it's going to be stress on everybody else.
I'm not talking about the owner. I'm talking about any team members.
Right. That's what I'm talking about. The team members when the owner's gone, because he's burned out.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not talking about the owner being out. I'm talking about if the team member's out. But same thing, it does create stress on everybody else, including the owner, right? And so, and you may have already experienced that, right? And so, and even some things aren't directly, some of the injuries or some of the health issues, like when an employee is out, sometimes it's hard to directly relate it to stress, because let's say they had an injury, a work-related injury. Well, it could be stress-related in the fact that, when you're under stress, you're not thinking as clearly. And you may make a mistake that costs an injury because you're not as alert, not as paying attention because of stress.
And then your immune system is not as strong when you're stressed out like that.
Yeah.
It makes it weaker, and you're not sleeping well, which that totally has havoc on your body. And because if you're so wired up all the time, and as soon as you go to lay down, your mind just starts spinning.
And that's where it's related to cancer, because a lot of cancers is the inability of the body's immune system to fight it off, or to kill off the highly replicating cells. And so, yeah, it affects your immune system, negatively affects your immune system, which in turn, any disease that relies on immune system to keep it at bay, which a lot of them do, that of course that can be a challenge.
Because your body rejuvenates itself while you're sleeping, detoxes. But if you're not sleeping and you're not getting into a deep sleep, that's really hard on your body.
So here's another interesting report by the WHO, not the band, for those of you that are close to our age, but the World Health Organization. It also reported an increase in working hours. Contributed to the deaths of 745,000 people in 2016. via whether it's stroke or ischemic heart disease. And so that's a lot, right? And that was a 29% increase compared to the data from 2000.
Wow. And I see a lot of women that are concerned, and it could, I'm sure, go both ways, that the husband has the business or is the owner of the business, and they're concerned about him being in such bad health that it really stresses them out, the wives, thinking about it.
Yeah, in fact, since you said that, studies show that women in the workplace, so women that are working, experience a higher rate of burnout compared to men due to what you're saying, the added home life responsibilities. So the wives are typically not only working, right? Especially if you're one of those husband-wife teams, she's working, supporting the business, or she could be the CEO of the business, whatever. But then she's always still got the home responsibilities that
Kids.
unfortunately, right, they kind of still take on when the husband doesn't really help as much as they probably should. I think there's kind of like a, that male hierarchy thing, right? It's kind of the old school where the wife was home raising the kids, and that's fine because that's a job in itself.
Oh yeah, that's more than a full-time job.
Then we, as husbands, we haven't made the adjustment when they're working, right? So we've kind of grown up just with the understanding that the mother is going to take care of the home, which, yeah, when we were in the era when they weren't working outside of the home, that makes sense. But now we got to seriously think and make some adjustments at how we help out around the house and with the kids, because now your wife is working plus taking care of the family, right?
And the house.
And as you, well, yeah, it's the whole thing. As you said, that's a full-time job in itself. And for men that don't realize it, when they finally actually do it, when their wife's out of town.
Oh yeah, they're like, they have a wake-up moment, like, oh my gosh, I have no idea.
So wives, maybe you need to leave town
more often.
Seriously. I mean, and that's, you hear women like, oh, they can't leave town because then, the kids are with the dad and all that kind of stuff. I said, well, you should do that, so your husband understands what the heck is going on. They'll be fine. They're going to live, right?
And then she hopefully can get some rest.
Even if he's only feeding them pizzas for a week or whatever, they're going to live, right? But it might be a good idea to leave town for a week,
and then he'll appreciate you more when you get back.
And then we can make some adjustments, because sometimes you don't appreciate what the other spouse is doing until you're in their shoes.
Yeah, you don't. Sometimes maybe they don't think about it.
Yeah, you don't, and especially
you don't realize how hard it is. You think, oh yeah, I could do that, and then when you have to do it, you're like, oh my word.
Yeah. So let's get into a little bit of the data of like how much work is too much. And so there's a couple studies, one in particular from Stanford, that showed that people that working 55 hours or more a week had a 35% higher risk of stroke.
It's that much higher?
And 17 higher risk of dying from ischemic heart disease.
Wow.
Compared to people who work 35 to 40 hours a week.
That's a big percentage.
Yes, it is. And so how much is too much? Well, it's not exactly set in stone, although there is a line that once you get over the 55-hour a week threshold, that your risk goes up. And so significantly. And so what's 55 hours a week look like? Right? That's about 11 hours a day. So
it doesn't leave a lot of room.
Not about, it is.
For 11 hours sleep and family
11
time.
hours a day. Yeah, 11 hours a day per week. 11 hours a day, 5 days a week. So yeah, that's
and eating healthy.
And so,
because if you're not home when you're just doing fast food and something on the go, that's another thing to consider.
So as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, hitting 55 hours of work a week is not that hard to do. Right. And so, yeah, so this is serious stuff. This is serious stuff, guys, that, again, you haven't had any health issues yet. Great. But just know that it's just ticking time bomb in a sense. As you keep working and working hard without taking breaks and all that kind of stuff, it is going to wear on your body and your health. And if you're down, then everybody suffers. You, of course, but then everybody else, your family, the team at work, right? Who's going to pick up the slack, all that kind of stuff. So you got to start putting together some things in place that will, free up a little bit of time. And it's not just about, and if you've been listening to us for a minute, it's not about just doing less work and working less hours, but it's about taking account of the things that you're doing in the business that where you can be more productive, right? Not putting more hours, but be productive and get more done with less time. And, we have that acronym A.D.E, AID, automate, delegate, eliminate. So what are the activities that are busy work for you that you can either automate, delegate to other people, or eliminate by saying no for now, or even permanently not to do, because there's so many things that we do that are just kind of time wasters or distractions. And then there's also getting into a better daily habit of how you start the day, the things you focus in on work, and of course, what you do at home to rest and recuperate.
Well, I want to say too is what are you eating? That's huge, because I know some moms or some families are so busy with all the baseball games and all the sports that every night their dinner is literally the drive-through as they're picking up kids and dropping them off. And I'm like, I understand that because it's so much simpler, but at the same time, you're not eating very well. It's not really nutritious. Nutritious. Thank you, honey.
So yeah, that takes a little bit of planning, but again, I think that could be part of your new daily habit is what are the things you eat. So maybe something that you prepare for at the beginning of the week or in the
Meal
morning.
prep.
How do we prepare? What do we want to eat that day? And we just went through 21 days of fasting, and so what I fasted was carbs and anything with processed sugar. And I felt better. I was more alert. I wasn't as sleepy during the afternoon. I didn't have to have that afternoon coffee, whatever, but I did feel better, had more energy. And so I'm like, So I've kind of continued that habit. I've kind of, ate some carbs now because I do miss spaghetti. Every once in a while bread, but I'm not trying to stay away from sandwiches, because that was one of the things, that was my regular go-to for lunch, was some kind of sandwich, right? And so kind of staying away from sandwiches, anything with bread and that kind of stuff. So kind of more high protein and veggies and fruits, right? And so anyways, that's part of the new daily habit or routine, is even what we eat or what I eat. And so if you need, some nice tips to get you started, we do have the 5 daily habits to thrive in tandem on our website. The link is in the show notes, but you can always go to marriedentrepreneur.co/5-daily-habits-download. marriedentrepreneur.co/5-daily-habits-download. And of course, the link is in the show notes. Get the 5 daily habits to thrive in tandem, and that'll kind of get you started and start thinking about what can I do differently to kind of reduce the stress level, right? Get more done in a shorter period of time. And because we all have habits, because I know sometimes when you see these things, 5 daily habits, 7 daily habits, or it's all about your habits, your daily habits. And sometimes you'll hear pushback on this, that, oh, this is too much work to create these new habits. And I said, well, you already have a habit. You already have habits.
Whether it's good or bad,
right?
you have it.
In other words, it's a routine. Habits are another word of saying routine. You all have a routine. And it's good to start to evaluate, is your routine healthy?
And is it working for you?
For example, going back to the heart attack issue, how you start the day, and I'm sure you've heard this, how you start the day sets the tone. And I would hear that too. I've heard just like you. And for a while, it just kind of went over my head, right? Until I saw some data.
Oh, that caught your eye.
I saw some research. I mean, I did actually, this is after I kind of did develop a better morning routine where I started in quiet, meditation, prayer, and we pray together and all that. But it was last year and a half ago, when we did a podcast, and I did a little bit of research on how you start the day. And there was medical research, a number of articles and research articles on the fact that the most common time for a heart attack was in the morning. Now, there's one that was talking about, anywhere from, I think, from 7 to 9, 7 to 10 a.m. in the morning was the most common time for a heart attack. And there was another piece of research, might have been from the same data, but they kind of niched it down a little bit more and said Monday morning between 7 and 10 was the most common time for a heart attack. And the reason being is that on weekends, typically you're a little bit more relaxed. Even if for some entrepreneurs, you're still thinking about work, and sometimes you do work a little bit, but you do, in general, no matter, even the hardest working, hustle and grind entrepreneur will take a little bit of time on Sunday or something like that, because, they got to be with the kid. They're forced to be with the kids, right? But, regardless, that in the weekend, we're kind of a little bit more rested and your body adjusts. And then when you start the morning, like a lot of entrepreneurs, they start the morning, they jump out of bed. And one of the first things they do is check their phones and maybe start answering texts and emails and stuff like that. And just jumping into the day, getting ready to run out the door and go to their business or go to their home office or whatever, right, to get started.
Make their whole big pot of coffee, and they're running out the door behind. They're late. Oh my gosh, I got all this stuff to do. Where's my keys? Where's my purse? And the kids can't find their shoes. And everybody's just running around trying to get out the door. And then you're trying to get to work and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm late because Susie couldn't find her shoes. You know what I mean? So you're running stressful. As soon as you get out of bed, you're running. As soon as your feet hit the ground.
So so the most common time for a heart attack is, Mondays between 7 and 10. So when you start to jump into the day, it creates a lot of unnecessary stress in your heart, basically. And the heart just can't handle that much that quick. And so not just Monday mornings, but every morning there's, again, to the research, it's when you kind of start the day a little bit slower, it gives your heart time to start to adjust and then go. And so that's why it's interesting when you research the different religions in the world. Of course, we're Christians, and so the Bible talks a lot about starting the morning in prayer and in quiet and be still and stillness, right? And there's a lot of other religions, whether you're Muslim or Buddhist or whatever, where there's a morning routine. They talk about some kind of prayer, meditation, and starting the morning in peace, basically, in a peaceful setting. So religions and ancient culture, they've known this for a while, but in the modern era, we've kind of put that on the wayside because our mentality is, every minute we waste, or we think starting your day in quiet is wasteful. And we're not getting things done. We need to get things done. We need to get things done. The hustle and grind mentality is to get things done and don't waste a minute, right? So starting in peace and still seems wasteful, yet it's the opposite. It's actually very productive. And we've talked about this before. I mean, even just as a business owner, one of the things that is important for you is maintaining your creativity and problem solving and all that. And that's a mental exercise. And we know, just think about this, when you're either camping or you're doing something relaxing and peaceful and fun or whatever, sometimes the best ideas hit you when you're not thinking about work, right? But when we're in the mode of work, we're too busy to be able to think or have some creative thought.
And then when we have that stress going too, I know, I just say, try and go to bed an extra 15 minutes early so you can get up an extra 15 minutes early so that you can kind of just make the day the way you want to, because I know it could really change your mood. If you wake up and your feet are hitting the ground and all this chaos is going on and you can't find your car keys and all that, I leave the house feeling discombobulated, and I'm probably not in the best mood because I'm rushing. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I'm then I forget something because my mind's on something else, and it's stressful.
Yeah. So I hope this helps. I mean, kind of shed some light. I hope we kind of convince you a little bit. I mean, if you don't believe us, trust the research, right?
Mm-hmm.
What was the old adage in 2020? Trust the science and the data. so it's all out there. The data's been out there. This isn't new stuff. This is data. Some of this is very old and some of it is a little more current. But the fact of the matter is, research after research just shows the ill effects that just overworking puts on our bodies and our health. And that's not healthy. And so we got to figure out a way to work better. And so that's kind of what we're all about, right?
And then ask your spouse, what kind of shape do you think I'm in physically or health-wise? Because I was talking to my cousin the other day, and he was saying him and his wife do this, and he thought he was in way better health than she did. And he was really surprised when she told him that.
Yeah.
And then he thought, I better go to the doctor and get everything checked out. So.
And our next week's episode, we're going to have our guest next week
is Gina and Kent.
Kent Morosky. Thank you, honey.
You're welcome.
I had a brain fart there. And so they have a testimony to share about burnout. So don't just take it from us. Don't just take it from medical research. We're going to hear from one of our podcast guests next week of what he or they went through with the overwork, the overwhelm, and the burnout stuff, and how the toll it took on their body. So,
well, it happens, I think, more than we think it does.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And then the recover or something like that. It's not like you're just going to recover from burnout in a week. I mean, could be quite a long process.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, thank you for listening. I hope, being that you're still listening, I know this has made an impact. So, please share this with another married entrepreneur who needs to hear this, another overworking, hustle and grind entrepreneur who need to hear this. And until next week, God bless. Thank you for listening to the Thriving in Tandem podcast. Please visit our website, marriedentrepreneur.co, for a variety of free resources to help your marriage and business succeed.
And feel free to leave us a review and share this episode with another married entrepreneur. That would mean so much to us.
See you next week.